This is Evan Robb, and I'm excited to be continuing my discussion with Rick Wormeli about redos and retakes, assessment, grading, all the exciting things that we talked about in our first conversation together. But in this conversation, Rick, we're going to drive it a little more into the classroom with giving some tips that teachers can think about, reflect on, and with a new year about to begin.
Well, thank you, Evan. I'm excited we're going to go to kind of a part two here too. The practical side of that is always going to lead to its eventual use. Mm-hmm. The thing that I would caution people on is that we have curriculum overload. I mean, we have a bajillion different standards, and so you probably can't do redos with all of them. So first, forgive yourself if you're thinking about this, that you don't do redos all the time if you're really excited about it. And maybe you just identify the 4 to 8 power standards, the most leveraging, the biggest boulders, and say, those, I will fight for these because they have so much impact on students' future success. So those will do the redos. The secondary or tertiary, the third level down, not so much. I probably won't push for those because I don't have time. And that kind of brings that larger idea that school is not set up for teaching. I don't know if people realize that. School is set up for perpetuating a curriculum and moving kids through a system, but we would not have so many standards if we were actually teaching the way that we understand the mind best learns. We would do a deeper dive instead of the mile wide, inch deep. So we have to be able to accept that premise that, there's a hierarchy to standards. This thing is just simply not as valued as that. And I've worked with some math supervisors and science supervisors and history supervisor, English, for the district, who understand that. So a teacher calls and says, what are the most pivotal things I teach? I have to hit these marks. If I hit nothing else, I hit these. And some have said they're all equally important, all 89. And that's not helpful. Mm-hmm. That's somebody who just needs to rethink what's going on. I would expect you to do the heavy lifting and be able to help me sort the hierarchy of what's really, where will I spend my rare, scarce commodity, time. Sure. So I'm going to do that. But let's say we've got somebody who's very helpful and we've identified those. And then I would say, try a redo like between now and December. I mean, just once. You're on pace. You don't have to redo everything. Mm-hmm. But most teachers are conscientious. So if you don't understand the first 2 or 3 examples, I set the rest of the class going. But with you, I might do a 4th example. That's kind of a mini redo. But if you're really talking about quizzes and homework and projects and tests and so on redoing, put a system in place where the kid has to create a calendar of learning, relearning before reassessing. We're not going to keep weighing the cow, hoping for a different weight. And, it just doesn't happen. What doesn't happen in my classroom, but it used to happen is, hey, Mr. Wormeli, I understand my mistake. Could I study at lunch and then take a new version of the test this afternoon so I can take the new grade home to my mom? No, because mom and dad have to sign the original one because they're in the loop. You can't do it without them knowing that you're doing that. And if you were to redo and get the same grade or lower, you and I are going to have some words because there should have been something in between that as you got there, a commitment from both those sides.
Let me ask you a couple quick questions.
Sure.
These are certainly things that have come my way over the years. So the first one is, if a student goes through the process and they redo, and let's say the student made a 65 on the first attempt of the assessment and they redo and they make a 90. What do we do? Do we average? Do we create some sort of combination? We record both of the grades, or do we count the grade that's most representative of the student's learning?
Well, it really depends on what your goal is. There's great value many times to keep the historical record. So we might add a column to that student's record on our electronic gradebook. The problem in the old software is that if you had a column to one student's record, it added to everybody's. And so a whole bunch of people might have 3 or 4 or 5 empty columns. Sure. Today that's been fixed, but some software is still a glitch. But I might want to keep the record of you were at a 60, and then you were at a 65, then an 82, and then finally a 90. That's fine. Ultimately, however, the bottom line is what they know at the very end of the year when we do transcripts, because the testimony for a grade is what a child carries forward and can do independent of all assistance, not what they used to be able to do and then forgot. Sure. So I really don't care if it took you 17 times or 3 times. The bottom line is right here, right now, when I'm making this decision that will go forward, what evidence do I have of where you are in relation to the goal? So we begin to think that a grade is only a report of evidence presented on a particular arbitrarily imposed calendar date, not necessarily the ultimate end of all of your proficiency regarding it. So if I incorporated previous scores, like I only gave you half a point to go back and for each problem you went back and corrected, or averaged the grades, I would be knowingly falsifying the grade. And no adult would ever tolerate that being applied to them. So we want to make sure we're doing the thing that leads to their success, their investment, and that means full credit, not partial credit, if I have this accurate evidence of that. Now, if I don't trust my test validity to create an accurate report, then all bets are off, and we need to talk about test design. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me throw another question at you. How do teachers, so actually let me rephrase that. Some students are going to be much more willing to want to seek out a retake opportunity.
Yeah.
There will be some students who are very happy to take a low grade and just be able to kind of scoot by that way. So of course, in my case, it's middle school. We're talking with 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. They're learning, they're growing up. Is it 50-50 in terms of, hey, I'm going to give you the retake opportunity and you need to meet me halfway? Or do you see it more like 70-30 or 60-40?
You know, I'm struck by what editors do for writers. They save them from themselves. And so a middle school kid, in your case, or high school, elementary, should not be left in charge of their future, their destiny, by saying, I don't care if I get a D, school sucks. And so the teacher backs off and says, no, they got to meet me halfway. That'll learn them the low grade. That's you abdicating your adult role. So I think you need to get in their face and save them for themselves. So the usual way that seems to be most constructive is if it's a D or an F or a 1 or a 0 or something just really inappropriate, it's not, you have to redo. Now, if the child says no, that's insubordinate and defiance. And so if I had a child standing up in my classroom and I said, please sit down in your chair, and he goes, no, I would never tolerate that. So I would go and say first, hey, what's going on? This is not the way you and I usually respect each other. And we want to enter into a mutual ethos. I'm looking out for you, you're looking out for me. I don't condescend to you, you actually get respect what I do. The situation, like if I wanted you to get in small groups and you hate small groups, you would still do it because you respect me so much. It's Mr. Wormley asking that. So I will put up with what I don't like about small groups. Well, I want to have that relationship, so I'm going to investigate. I'm not going to immediately go to a discipline referral because that's not going to help, because that's just punitive and it's just throwing stuff at it and not getting to the core of it. I'm also going to be mindful that in middle school and high school, let alone elementary, that you are hardwired from birth to want to do demanding, complex things, to succeed, to please others. So if they manifest an unwillingness or an apathy, something is up. And I need to investigate what that is and respond to that, not use that as the judgment of the child, because that was a facade. Like I've had middle school kids who can't read on grade level. And so the homework or the project required a lot of reading. Well, they chose to like put it off because if they did the reading and tried to answer the questions, it would have been more proof that they were an idiot. And why should I give the world more ammunition that I don't belong and that could be rejected? I'd rather come across as, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I'm disorganized or whatever it was, than to say, I can't read. Because we demonize failure as something to avoid, not something to embrace and really learn from that. And that is a constructive experience. Mm-hmm. So I am not going to tolerate the child saying no, but I'm also going to do this. A, B, C, or 4, 3, 2, or whatever your scale is, the 2 or 3 top ones. I got to decide, is this so paramount? This is one of those big boulder ones that I have to push it, or could I get Elsa about it from Frozen and just let it go?
Excellent. Let me, Rick, I have another question for you. So let's say there's some teachers that are viewing this and they decide, okay, we're going to give retakes a try. And let's say that it's in a middle school or a high school and it's on a team and there are several teachers. There's a math teacher, history teacher, science teacher, an English teacher. Is there benefit for the teachers to have a conversation to make sure there's some consistency in how they communicate retakes from one classroom to the other and how they might encourage students to engage in additional learning opportunities prior to a retake? Or are you an advocate for each teacher kind of doing it the way that makes the most sense to them?
Oh man, this is so hard. I love consistency. Everybody likes consistency. It's great. It reinforces. It's so successful. The problem would be if you've got some colleagues who are really against it, yet you know ethically and effectively in instruction, it's the way to go. So are you going to subordinate what you know to be really effective because somebody else isn't there yet? Or can you say, hey guys, let's just call it a pilot so nobody freaks out. It's temporary, it's a pilot. But every single year you know you're going to extend and keep doing it, so you find another excuse to extend that pilot. We need a larger sample size, or we think we might publish, or whatever it might be. But if you do it for a bit and then present the results, folks who are initially hesitant might come around. But one of the other things I find very helpful is that when I do training of second career teachers, so they were in the mathematics world, the scientific world, the military, whatever it might be, and now they're going to go into the classroom after 20, 30 years, they get redos and the value for full credit right away, because it's far more reflective of the working world. It's the folks who went to college and they were right into the classroom who didn't see that this is actually a part of the scientific process. This also the mathematical process. It's a control for different variables and try it again if it doesn't work the first time. It's a way you develop perseverance and tenacity and so on. And the other ones that kind of drag along. So if I can get them, the folks who are in that larger working world prior to going to the classroom, to give some kind of testimony, or at least walk my department through that, it's fine. But if it comes down to doing right by my students and them really learning it, because I'm mindful that incompetence and ignorance is never preparatory. So the greater gift is always competence, not incompetence. So if I say no redo, I've just said it's okay for you to be incompetent. If it comes down to choosing between a child's learning the material in my class and keeping the political peace, massaging the ego of others in the team, I just want to be very, very clear. My professional colleagues will lose every time. I will always side on that child's success, not keeping the peace. And I have to tell you, there have been some colleagues of mine where I got the silent treatment for a while. Now, I remained very open, very inviting if they ever wanted to talk about it. But I was also very, very sure that, one, going back to Benjamin Bloom and Mastery Learning, we have research that reiteration works, plus all the stuff in between. Rick and Becky DeFore, in Rick's last book before he passed away, there's a big section on, yes, you want to do redos. Everybody agrees who's in the assessment grading world, but with all those who are in the cognitive science world, you know, talk about how the mind best learns. I agree with this. It's come together. It's a convergence of just common sense, but also we know from the research in the field that I think I can continue to do it and still be very open and welcoming and be open to conversation should anybody be stumbling or frustrated by my particular policies. Now, the weird thing for principals, of course, is we'll get parents who will say, I want my child moved to that other teacher's class that does redos. And a really weird thing happened. I thought people would think I was soft, that if you're a slacker, you want me as a teacher. And I found out from my community and from my colleagues, because I live in the same neighborhood where I taught, that the reputation was the opposite. If you are a slacker, you don't really get your work done, you don't want Mr. Wormley because he will haunt your nightmares. The consequence for not doing your work is doing your work. He will get in your face. I've had kids say, man, Mr. Wormley makes you do it over and over again until you learn it. It stinks. And for me, I'm going, touchdown. I bite down and I don't let go. So kind of to wrap this up, I would say that to deny a redo when a child gets an F or a 0 or a D is a cop-out. It's a weak teacher because you're removing the burden of learning from him. You're letting him escape his learning. And that's never preparatory because it leads to the incompetence. And then they have nothing with them when they move into the next level.
Wow, really powerful stuff. We don't have a lot of time for this today, but I do know that in many, I've experienced before that if a student does not do well in a particular assessment, parents often ask for extra credit. And I can remember with my own children that instead of having to relearn the material, at times they could bring in a couple boxes of tissues.
Oh no, I hate that.
Oh, it happened. It did happen. It was a long time ago now. Rick, let me ask you one other question because I think this is important for our teachers and administrators who are listening to this video, watching this video.
Yeah.
When it comes to redos and retakes, do they go on forever or is there a time when the classroom teacher needs to say, okay, it needs to stop because I do need to wrap up my grades?
Well, you have one of three choices every single time you teach anything, whether you're into this stuff or not. And one is this: is this thing so fundamental that I cannot possibly go on? None of it will make sense in the future unless you go back and master these foundations. And I'm going to plow ahead and I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go back and reiterate. We're going to get into it. Is this something that's just nice to know, but it's not really germane or pertinent to what's to come? I might need to let it go, choose my battles. Or is this really just a skill in isolation or a subset of a larger topic that I will actually address in meaningful context in about 4 or 5 weeks or something? Well, you know what? This is just introduction here. I'm not going to sweat the lack of mastery. When I do that thing in 5 weeks, I will come back and revisit this. That's okay. I'm going to spiral back. So you have to decide, each of those times, what you want to do. But as far as when you stop redoing it, basically it's this: when you die. That's it. Now, it seems like, obviously it's hyperbole, but the basic thing is this: whenever I say no more, you've tried it 6 times and I've had it. You've said this: it's okay if you don't learn. And that's actually beyond the pay grade of most public school teachers, let alone the board of directors for a private school. They don't get to decide the curriculum. And you're also caving into the kids' immaturity or irresponsibility, whatever it is. So I will admit to you that I do this, and I'm suggesting others can give it a shot. There are times when I realize I am not creative enough to figure out how to teach you, or you're not ready to receive school. So right now it's become dysfunctional. Let's shelve it, and maybe in 2 weeks, we'll come back and revisit. If we have calendar left, real estate left in the year, then I feel like I need to give that a shot. But I'm driving it into the ground. You're not willing to listen. And this is just not helping at all. Your mind is on the sports tournament. Your mind is on the literary magazine. Your mind is on other classes. So let's pull back for a second, and then we'll regroup and do that. I think that's legitimate. But that would require that most teachers and principals would see grade books as cumulative for the entire year. And when you do a report card every 9 weeks or 6 weeks or every trimester, that's really just a status check. It's just a progress check. And it's legit to say, yeah, you have an F, you have a D, or whatever the low grade is, but it's recoverable by the end of the year. And so whenever you mature into your bones, so to speak, whenever you kind of want to step up and you get it, I will be your loudest cheerleader and willing to invest in you. You weren't ready before, but you are now, because my hand will constantly be open. This is this gift I give you. Please, I implore you, just please pick up the gift from that and let me share the path. I won't do the work for you, but I'll walk the path with you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing such a powerful message, really an inspiring message, a message about putting kids first, and a message that certainly resonates through your work of hope and making sure that students cannot get away with not learning, and they certainly couldn't in your classroom. And we want to encourage that in more and more classrooms all across the United States of America. Rick, I thank you for having a conversation with me. This is the second part of our conversation. It was very, very, very enjoyable. This is Evan Robb, and I am encouraging you to bring some creativity and innovation into your life, and reminding you that if you do that at times, you need to disrupt your routine.